The sky above the dragon peaks was painted in shades of orange and gold. The wind howled through the jagged cliffs, carrying the distant cries of dragons. Among them, a young dragon named Lyra flew carefully over the valley. Her scales shimmered in the sunlight, a mix of deep blue and silver. But today, she did not feel proud or free. She felt fear. Lyra's heart pounded. She had done something forbidden, something the elders of the dragon clan would never forgive. She had given birth out of season. The baby, small and fragile, had barely opened its eyes. The scales were soft, not yet hardened. The elders' law was clear. Dragons must not give birth at the wrong time. The balance of the clan, the strength of their species, must be preserved. But Lyra had no choice. The child had to be born. And now the punishment was coming. The elders descended from the highest peak, their wings cutting the air with sharp precision. Their eyes glowed with anger and disappointment. "Lyra," the oldest elder said, his voice deep and echoing, "you have broken the law of our people. You have endangered the clan. You must leave. You are no longer welcome." Lyra's wings trembled. "Please," she whispered. "The baby, he cannot survive alone." "I had no choice." The elder shook his massive head. "Rules are rules. You must leave. Now." Lyra had no strength to argue further. With a heavy heart, she turned her wings and flew toward the forbidden lands, a dangerous place where no dragon dared to go. Her small baby clung to her back, trembling. Every beat of her wings was filled with fear and uncertainty. She did not know what awaited them in this desolate land. The forbidden lands were dark and full of dangers. Jagged rocks rose like teeth from the ground. Smoke and ash covered the horizon. Strange noises echoed from the shadows. Creatures that crawled, slithered, and prowled, watching every move. Lyra's sharp eyes scanned the land. Every moment, she felt the tension rising, as if the world itself was warning her. Danger was near. Hours passed. Hunger and fatigue weighed heavily on her. The baby whimpered, its tiny claws clutching her scales. Lyra tried to soothe it with gentle warmth, but her own fear was too strong. She wondered if she had made the right choice. Maybe the elders were right. Maybe she had doomed them both. Suddenly, a sharp noise shattered the silence. A branch snapped somewhere nearby. Lyra's wings lifted instinctively. Her eyes darted around, searching the shadows. But there was nothing. Only the wind. Only the darkness. Yet she felt it, a presence. Something watching her. Something not of the mountains or the land she knew. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling but strong. Her claws dug into the rocky ground, ready to fight if needed. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, a figure emerged from the mist. At first, Lyra could not believe her eyes. It was a human. A human? In the Forbidden Lands? Humans were rare here, almost legends. They were weak compared to dragons, fragile and small. But this one looked different. Strong, confident, and curious. He carried strange tools and a small pack on his back. His eyes were bright, watching her every move. Lyra's heart raced. Should she attack? Or should she run? The baby on her back needed her strength. She could not risk losing them both. Yet the human did not move aggressively. Instead, he stepped closer slowly, carefully. "Don't be afraid," the human said, his voice calm. "I won't hurt you." Lyra narrowed her eyes. She could sense something unusual about him, something different from other humans. He moved with purpose, but also with caution. His hands were skilled, holding small devices she did not recognize. He looked like someone who could survive here, someone who could even help. A small hope flickered inside her. Maybe she had not been completely alone. Maybe the stranger could be the chance she needed to keep her baby safe. But just as quickly, doubt returned. Could she trust him? Humans were unpredictable, and the Forbidden Lands were full of dangers that even she could not see. Every step she took, every beat of her wings, could lead them closer to safety or to disaster. Lyra's tail lashed behind her as she shifted her weight. "If you help me," she said carefully, "you must protect my child. No tricks, No games. The human nodded. I understand. I'm not here to harm you, but we must move quickly. Something else is out there, watching us. Lyra's scales bristled. Watching us? Yes, he said, his eyes scanning the horizon. Something waits for a mistake. A chill ran down Lyra's spine. The wind howled louder, carrying strange whispers through the rocks. She looked at her baby, small and vulnerable, and then back at the human. Somehow, she knew that this meeting was no accident. The path ahead was dangerous, filled with enemies they could not yet see. But for the first time, Lyra felt a spark of hope. She spread her wings. Together, dragon and human stepped into the unknown. The Forbidden Lands were dark, mysterious, and deadly, but Lyra would do anything to protect her child. And she had a feeling. The human mechanic was the key to surviving it. The Forbidden Lands were silent, except for the low howl of the wind. Jagged rocks jutted out from the blackened ground, and thick ash floated in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Lyra's wings ached, and the baby on her back whimpered softly. Every step felt heavier than the last, and every shadow seemed alive with danger. The human who had appeared in the mist walked beside her now. His movements were careful but confident, as if he knew the land better than he let on. Strange tools hung from his belt, and small glowing devices peeked from his pack. Lyra watched him closely, unsure if she could trust him completely. But for now, he was the only hope she had. We need to find shelter, the human said. The night here is dangerous. Predators, creatures, and worse. Lyra glanced at him. Worse? She asked, her voice low. Her sharp eyes scanned the horizon. The shadows were long and twisted, moving in ways that made her scales tingle. He nodded. There are things in these lands that even dragons fear. If we stay out too long, we might not survive until dawn. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. She had lived in the mountains all her life, flying through storms, hunting prey, avoiding enemies. But something about this land was different. Felt alive, watching, waiting. And now the humans seemed to know its secrets. They moved carefully through a narrow canyon. The baby's tiny claws clung to her back as she navigated the sharp rocks. The human occasionally stopped to adjust his tools, tapping on glowing screens or turning strange dials. Lyra did not understand his devices, but she noticed something important. They seemed to make the land quieter, the shadows less threatening. You can trust me, he said quietly, as if reading her mind. I'm not just wandering here. I have a reason for being in these lands, and I think I might be able to help you. Lyra's wings twitched. Help me? How? You are human. You cannot fight the dangers here alone. He smiled faintly. I don't fight like other humans. I build. I fix. I create things. And sometimes, that's enough to survive. Lyra wanted to believe him, but the wind carried a low growl from the darkness ahead. Something moved, quick, silent, and large. Her instincts screamed at her. Danger was close. Hide! She hissed, lowering her body behind a boulder. The human crouched beside her, carefully holding a small device that hummed softly. The growl grew louder, echoing against the canyon walls. Lyra's wings lifted, ready to strike, ready to flee. Then, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the shadows. A massive creature, unlike anything she had ever seen, stepped into the dim light. Its skin was rough and dark, its claws long and sharp, and it had a mouth filled with jagged teeth. It moved with terrifying speed, circling them like a predator. Lyra growled, a low rumble vibrating in her chest. She would fight if she had to, protecting her baby at all costs. But the human did something unexpected. He held up his device, pressed a small button, and a bright light shot out in a precise beam. The creature hissed and recoiled, then slowly retreated, eyes wary. Lyra blinked. What was that? The human glanced at her, calm and collected. A deterrent. It won't hurt it, but it tells it to back off. I can protect us, if you trust me. Her heart raced. She had never seen a human with this kind of skill. Perhaps he was different from the ones she had heard of in stories, small, weak, fragile. This one was clever, resourceful, and somehow fearless. For hours, they moved together through the dangerous land. The humans' devices kept them safe from predators and hidden traps. Lyra began to sense something strange. She felt safer with him than she had with any dragon in the mountains. His presence was steady, calm, and clever. He noticed things she didn't and solved problems before they became threats. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in deep reds and purples, they finally reached a small cave hidden behind thick rocks. The human quickly set up a small protective barrier, a faint glowing shield that made Lyra's scales tingle with warmth. "You'll be safe here for the night," he said. "No creature can enter without you knowing." Lyra lowered her wings, exhausted but relieved. Her baby stirred, and she nuzzled it gently. For the first time since her banishment, she felt a spark of hope. The human watched her carefully, then spoke softly. "Tomorrow we must move farther into the land. There are things here that want more than just to scare us, they want to hunt. And I think you and your baby may be the key to something bigger than either of us." Lyra's eyes widened. "Bigger?" He nodded, but did not explain further. Instead, he began checking his tools, preparing for the night. Lyra felt a mixture of curiosity and caution. Something about this human was different. He was more than a traveler, more than a helper. He carried secrets, and perhaps even power. As darkness fell, the cave was quiet, but not completely. Shadows moved outside. The wind whispered through the rocks. And Lyra, sitting with her baby safely beside her, realized that the human mechanic was no ordinary human. Somehow he had appeared at the right time. Somehow he might be the only chance she had to survive. But deep in the forbidden lands, unseen eyes watched. And not all of them were friendly. The adventure was only beginning. The morning sun barely broke through the thick ash clouds over the forbidden lands. Lyra stretched her wings carefully, keeping her baby close. The baby stirred, tiny claws clutching her scales. The night had been long, but nothing had dared enter their small cave. For now, at least they were safe. The human mechanic, who had saved them from danger the previous day, sat outside the cave. He was examining one of his small glowing devices, tapping on it with precision. Lyra watched him silently. She did not understand most of what he did, but she could feel the intelligence and care behind each action. He was methodical, calm, and surprisingly patient for a human. "We have to move," he said suddenly, glancing at her. "The cave is safe for now, but predators and worse threats will come. If we stay, we'll be cornered eventually." Lyra nodded. She had flown through storms, hunted prey, and survived countless dangers. But the forbidden lands were different. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound carried a hidden warning. She trusted the human cautiously, but she knew he spoke the truth. Together, they left the cave. Lyra's wings carried her over the jagged rocks, the baby clinging tightly to her back. The human walked below, moving swiftly and carefully, his devices scanning the terrain ahead. It was an odd sight, a dragon flying with a fragile baby, and a small human navigating a deadly landscape, side by side. Hours passed. The human proved his worth again and again. When a sudden crevasse appeared in their path, he quickly set up a small bridge-like structure from glowing rods and panels. Lyra's eyes widened in amazement as she saw the baby crawl safely across the narrow span, guided by her careful wings. "You're clever," Lyra admitted softly, watching him work. The human smiled faintly. "I have to be. This land doesn't forgive mistakes. And neither do the creatures here." Lyra felt a growing respect for him. He was not like other humans she had heard about, weak, fragile, helpless. This one had strength, skill, and courage. And somehow he seemed to understand her, even when words were not enough. As they traveled, the human shared some small truths about himself. He was an engineer, a mechanic who worked with machines humans could barely imagine. His devices were made for survival, for defense, and sometimes for solving problems no dragon could. Lyra listened, fascinated. Perhaps humans could be useful after all. But there was no time for comfort. The The forbidden lands were alive with danger. Strange shadows moved in the distance, flickering between rocks. The wind carried noises that were not animal cries but something sharper and more intelligent. Lyra's tail lashed behind her, her scales bristling. She could sense they were being watched. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed from the canyon ahead. A pack of large, spiked creatures emerged, moving quickly and silently. Their eyes glowed with a predatory light. Lyra growled, instinctively lifting off the ground. The baby squeaked nervously, but she held it tight against her chest. The human did not panic. He raised a device in one hand, pressing buttons and turning dials. A protective shield appeared, shimmering with light, covering their path. The creatures snarled and leapt forward, only to be blocked by the invisible barrier. "Stay close," the human shouted. "I can hold them off for a few moments." Lyra understood. She flapped her wings with all her strength, dodging the creature's attacks. Her claws slashed, her tail whipped, and her roar echoed through the canyon. The creatures hesitated, confused by the human's strange technology and her fierce defense. Together, dragon and human forced the creatures back, slowly driving them away from the narrow canyon. It was exhausting, dangerous, and terrifying, but it worked. Finally, the last of the spiked predators fled into the shadows, snarling and defeated. Lyra landed heavily on a rocky ledge, her wings trembling from fatigue. The baby whimpered but was unharmed. She looked at the human, who adjusted his devices calmly, as if the fight had been nothing. "You're amazing," she said, her voice low but filled with admiration. "I didn't know a human could do that." He shrugged, a small smile on his face. "I do what I must. And you fought well too. That baby is lucky to have you." Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. Trust was forming slowly but surely. They were no longer just a dragon and a human crossing a dangerous land. They were a team, an alliance, and in the forbidden lands that might be the only thing that could keep them alive. As they moved forward, the human glanced behind, frowning. "We're not alone," he said softly. "Something else is tracking us. I can feel it. We need to reach higher ground, somewhere I can scan the area more clearly." Lyra's wings lifted instinctively. Her instincts screamed the same warning. She realized that the land itself was testing them, watching every step. But with this human beside her, she no longer felt completely helpless. Somehow, together, they could face it. The day was ending, and shadows grew long across the jagged rocks. Yet, in the midst of danger, an unspoken understanding formed. Dragon and human, strange allies in a hostile world, were beginning to trust each other. And as the sun dipped behind the ash-filled horizon, a faint glimmer of hope appeared. A promise that together, they could survive. But deep in the dark canyons, hidden eyes watched. And whatever waited for them next, it was larger, smarter, and far more dangerous than anything they had faced so far. The alliance had begun, but the true test of trust and courage was only ahead. The air grew colder as Lyra and the human climbed higher into the rocky hills. The sky above was darkening, filled with heavy clouds that blocked the sun. Shadows stretched across the jagged ground, twisting and moving in ways that made Lyra uneasy. Her wings trembled with each gust of wind, and the baby on her back whimpered softly. "We need to keep moving," the human said, scanning the horizon with his device. Small lights flickered across its surface, tracking movement in the distance. "Something is following us, and it's not like the predators we've already seen." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" "Something intelligent." He nodded. "Yes, this land is full of strange creatures, but this one, it watches, plans, waits. I've never felt anything like it." A low growl echoed from behind the rocks. Lyra's tail lashed in alarm. Her instincts screamed at her that danger was near. Suddenly, a massive shadow moved over the cliffside, faster than any animal she had encountered. It wasn't hunting blindly. It was stalking them, calculating each move. Lyra flapped her wings, lifting off the ground. The human followed, running swiftly, his devices glowing in his hands. They reached a narrow ridge where the wind was strong enough to carry them farther away from immediate danger. But the shadow moved with them, relentless and unseen. Then, without warning, a group of dark, armored creatures dropped from the cliffs above. Their scales were jagged, their eyes glowed red, and long spikes ran along their backs. They had the speed of predators and the intelligence of hunters. Lyra roared, swinging her tail, but there were too many. The human activated a device on his belt. A bright barrier formed around them, shimmering with energy. The creatures hit the shield with a violent force but could not break through. Sparks flew, and the ground trembled under the impact. "Hold them off!" the human shouted. "We need to move before more arrive." Lyra's wings carried her higher, dodging the creature's attacks. Her claws slashed, striking those that came too close. The baby squealed but held tight against her back. For the first time, Lyra realized that her off-season birth might have drawn attention. The baby was special, different. Perhaps the reason these creatures had found them. The human guided them toward a hidden canyon, using his devices to detect weak points in the enemy's approach. His movements were precise, almost mechanical, and every action saved them from certain danger. Lyra began to understand something vital. This human was not just clever, he had prepared for threats like this. Somehow, he knew the forbidden lands better than she did. They reached a narrow cave and took refuge, the human quickly setting up protective wards. The creatures could not enter, but their growls and pounding claws echoed outside. Lyra pressed her body against her baby, listening to the sound of their relentless pursuit. "What are they?" she asked, her voice low. "Why are they after us?" The human studied his device, frowning. "They are hunting something rare, something they recognize. Your baby, it has a power they want. I'm not sure exactly what it is yet, but they will not stop until they get it." Lyra's heart pounded. She had feared for her child's life before, but now she realized the danger was greater than she had imagined. The baby was not just fragile, it was a target. And the forbidden lands were alive with enemies who would stop at nothing. Hours passed, the shadows outside shifting and waiting. The human tinkered with his devices, whispering calculations and measurements to himself. Lyra watched, exhausted but alert, realizing that their survival depended on this strange alliance. Alone, she would have been killed long ago. But together, perhaps they had a chance. Suddenly, the device beeped sharply. The human's eyes widened. "They're surrounding us," he said, his voice tense. "Not all of them, but enough. We need to make a choice. Fight, flee, or find something that can turn the tide." Lyra's wings lifted instinctively. She had faced enemies before, but never like this. These creatures were not ordinary predators. They were organized, intelligent, and ruthless. And the baby's presence had drawn them here. The human looked at her seriously. I know a place, farther north. A place that is hidden, protected. But it's risky. We have to trust each other completely." Lyra met his gaze. Her scales bristled, her tail lashed, but she nodded. They had no other choice. Trust was all they had. And if they could survive the night, maybe they could uncover the truth behind the hidden threat, and the reason her baby was so important. Outside, the growls continued. Red eyes gleamed in the darkness, moving closer with every heartbeat. The Forbidden Lands had revealed a secret, one far more dangerous than Lyra had ever imagined. But with the human beside her, she felt a spark of courage. They would not survive by strength alone. They would survive by alliance, by cleverness, and by the bond forming between dragon and human. The hidden threat was close. The adventure was far from over. And the true danger was only beginning to show its face. The sky was dark, filled with ash and smoke, as Lyra and the human mechanic moved cautiously through the rugged terrain. The wind howled around them, carrying distant roars and the sharp scent of danger. The baby, tucked safely against Lyra's back, stirred occasionally, sensing the tension in the air. "We have to keep moving," the human said, scanning the horizon with his device. "They're learning our patterns. Every step we take, they're adapting. If we don't reach the northern sanctuary soon, we won't last. Lyra's wings trembled, exhaustion weighing heavily on her. She had flown farther than she had ever imagined, facing dangers she could not have predicted. Her body ached, her claws were scraped, and yet she pressed on. Her baby's life depended on her, and for the first time, she understood the true cost of being banished. Suddenly, a loud, echoing roar shook the cliffs. Red eyes glowed in the darkness, and dozens of spiked creatures emerged from the shadows. They moved faster than before, more coordinated, as if guided by a single mind. Lyra growled, her wings lifting instinctively. The human raised his devices, energy shields flickering into place. "This is it," he said, determination in his voice. "We can't outrun them. We have to face them together." Lyra hesitated. Fighting now could mean death, not just for her but for her baby and the human. But she could feel the bond forming between them. Somehow, together, they were stronger than apart. She nodded, her resolve hardening. The creatures charged. Lyra's claws struck with precision. Her tail whipped through the air, and her roar echoed like thunder. Sparks flew as her attacks met the armored scales of the enemy. The human moved quickly, using his devices to create barriers and traps. Each flash of light, each humming shield, gave them precious seconds to fight and maneuver. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the creatures leapt directly at the baby. Lyra's heart froze. She spread her wings, diving with lightning speed, and caught the small form just in time. The creature snarled, striking at her. But the human released a blast of light from his device, forcing it back. Lyra's chest heaved. The baby whimpered but was unharmed. Her eyes met the human's, and for a moment, no words were needed. They understood each other completely. Survival depended on courage, quick thinking, and trust. After what felt like hours, the creatures finally retreated, vanishing into the darkness from which they had come. The wind died down, leaving an eerie silence. Lyra landed on a rocky ledge, wings trembling, claws scraped and worn. The human set his devices aside, breathing heavily but steady. "That was close," Lyra said, her voice low. "I don't know how we survived." The human shook his head. "We did survive because we worked together. But this isn't over. That was just the first wave. There's more coming. And I think they know exactly why your baby is here." Lyra's eyes widened. They want him?" He nodded. "Yes, there's something about him, something powerful, something rare. I don't know all the details yet, but it's why they're hunting us so fiercely." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. She had feared for her baby's life, but now she realized the danger was far greater than she had imagined. Her child was not just fragile. He was a target with a purpose she could not yet understand. "We need to reach the northern sanctuary," the human said, urgency in his voice. "It's hidden, protected, and it's the only place we might have a chance. But it's risky. We'll face more enemies, traps, and challenges before we get there. I need to know, can I count on you?" Lyra lifted her wings, her gaze fierce. "You can. I will do whatever it takes to protect my baby. Together we can survive." The human smiled faintly, relief flashing across his face. "Good, because the next part of this journey will test us in ways we can't even imagine." As they prepared to move again, Lyra felt a strange energy pulsing from her baby. A warmth, faint but powerful, that seemed to light the shadows around them. The human noticed it too, his eyes widening. "That's it," he whispered. "That's what they want. It's not just any dragon. Your baby holds something incredible. If we survive this, we might finally understand why." Lyra's heart raced. The weight of her banishment, the danger of the forbidden lands, the relentless pursuit by the creatures. It all led to this moment. She realized that survival was no longer enough. Now it was about protecting her child and uncovering the truth behind the hidden threat. The wind howled louder as night approached. Shadows stretched across the jagged rocks, flickering like restless spirits. Lyra lifted her wings, feeling the familiar power in her muscles. The human activated his devices, shields humming with light. Together, they stepped into the darkness, ready to face whatever came next. And deep in the shadows, eyes glowed, watching, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The turning point had come. The choices they made now would determine their fate, and the fate of the mysterious child that held the key to the future. The northern sanctuary rose before them like a hidden jewel among the jagged cliffs. Strange rocks glowed faintly, marking the path, and a cool wind carried the scent of safety, or at least, something closer to safety than the forbidden lands. Lyra's wings ached, but her resolve had never been stronger. The baby clung tightly to her back, tiny eyes wide, sensing the tension in the air. "We're close," the human mechanic said, scanning the horizon. "If we can reach the sanctuary, they won't follow. But we have to move carefully. Any mistake could be our last." Lyra nodded. She could feel the creatures surrounding them, watching from the shadows, tracking their every movement. The hunt had grown more relentless with each passing hour. She spread her wings, taking off with swift, powerful strokes, the baby secure and warm against her scales. The first wave of creatures appeared before they reached the sanctuary. Dark, armored, and relentless. Lyra roared, her wings slicing through the air, claws striking with precision. The human raised his devices, creating barriers and traps, his fingers moving quickly over buttons and dials. Light flashed, shields hummed, and the creatures crashed against invisible walls. Lyra realized then how strong their alliance had become. The human was no longer just a companion, he was a partner, a protector, a strategist. Together they fought as one, their movements coordinated, instinctive. Every attack, every maneuver had purpose. Every moment counted. But the creatures were clever. They adapted to their shields, circled around their defenses, and lunged from unexpected angles. Lyra's wings flared as she dodged and struck, while the humans' devices emitted bright flashes, stunning some of the attackers. Yet they kept coming, more numerous and smarter than ever before. "Hold on!" the human shouted, activating a new device. A beam of concentrated energy shot from it, striking the largest creature. The enemy screamed, staggering back, its eyes glowing brighter for a moment, then dimming as it fell. The others hesitated, startled by the human's sudden power. Lyra's claws struck again, and the tide began to turn. The creatures, confused and injured, slowly retreated into the shadows. She landed at the entrance of the sanctuary, panting, her wings trembling. The human quickly set up protective wards at the cave mouth, a glowing barrier that would shield them from any follow-up attacks. Inside, the sanctuary was calm, a hidden oasis filled with soft glowing crystals and warm, gentle energy. Lyra set her baby down, watching it crawl slightly, exploring this new, strange place. Relief washed over her, but she knew the danger wasn't gone. Something bigger still lingered in the shadows of the forbidden lands. The human looked at her seriously. "We made it, for now. But your baby, he's the key. Whatever power he holds, it's more than we imagined. That's why they hunted us. And there's someone else. Someone who will come for him." Lyra's heart pounded. "Who?" The human hesitated, then spoke. "I'm part of a group. Humans who study dragon evolution, strange energy, and hidden forces in the galaxy. Your baby, he is special. Not just a dragon. Something ancient, something the universe has been waiting for. And now, because of the off-season birth, the balance has shifted." Lyra's scales bristled. The off-season birth, it was dangerous, forbidden. But now, it's a gift. The human nodded. "Yes, but there are those who would use it for destruction. We need to protect him, teach him, and make sure the forbidden lands or the galaxy doesn't fall into chaos." Lyra realized then that everything that had happened, the banishment, the chase, the battles, was leading to this moment. Her baby was not just a fragile child. He was a key to something far larger than her or even her clan. The human had appeared at the right time, with the skills, knowledge, and courage to help her survive. But as they prepared to rest, a soft, almost imperceptible glow appeared from the baby. The crystals in the sanctuary reflected it, creating a web of light that filled the cave. The human gasped, his devices responding automatically to the energy, scanning and humming. Lyra watched, awe and fear mixing in her chest. The power inside her child was awakening, stronger than she imagined. The creatures, the pursuit, the sacrifices, it had all been to bring them here, to protect this moment. The human looked at her with a serious expression. We're not done yet. Others will come, testing us, testing him. But together we can survive. And maybe, just maybe, we can change the fate of dragons and humans forever. Lyra nodded. She lifted her wings, feeling strength returning, courage rising. The bond between dragon and human had grown into something unbreakable. Her child's future was uncertain, dangerous, but full of potential. Outside, the shadows of the Forbidden Lands waited, hidden eyes watching. But for now, Lyra, her baby, and the human mechanic were safe. The adventure had reached a turning point. The battles were not over, but the first victory had been won. And in the quiet glow of the sanctuary, one truth became clear. Even in a universe filled with danger, betrayal, and ancient power, alliance, courage, and trust could change everything. The story was ending, but a new chapter had just begun.